player has joined the game.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Building Blocks, where we program Minecraft mods live on camera and watch them inevitably explode, which happens more often than I might prefer to admit. But also, welcome to the Raiders from Kezachi, hello. Kez, I believe, is one of the major organising parties behind the Tyser body acting roles I play, so yay. Right. So, yep. You ever have one of those days where it's like, whoops, my finger slipped, and suddenly you have a massive pile of stuff just sort of from nowhere? That's kind of what happened to me in the last couple of days. So, there is a video coming out tomorrow about the type system that describes it in its entire detail and tells you all about it and what it does and what the different types do and what they mean and how to put them together, that sort of thing. At the very tail end of that video, I mentioned that the Origins mod, which is a mod that basically lets you just say, I'm this or I am that, and everyone gets to play what they like, is only available on Fabric. There is naturally a lot of comparisons between the type system of various oddities and the Origins mod. Literally hours after I upload that video to be, released on YouTube, I get word that there is an, as near as I can tell, unofficial port of Origins to Forge, which is what Various Oddities is on. So then programmer brain go burr, and I hastily threw together something resembling an abilities system, which is the major distinction between Various Oddities' type system and Origins, the fact that it can't give you activated abilities or such. Everything that is a air aberration is an air aberration is an air aberration, which has its own merits, which I'll describe in a second. But in order to know what abilities you have and what not, we need a fairly complex data structure, because most of what we see along these type handlers, so the resistances, the fire resistances, whether they can take poison, all these sorts of things, most of that is what we would classify as an ability individually. So being resistant to fire damage or vulnerable to holy damage, that kind of thing, are strictly speaking abilities, though the vulnerability to energy ability. So we need a set of abilities drawn from the types of a creature, and then a set of abilities drawn from the creature itself and its living data, in order to know what abilities it actually has. And we don't really want repeats under most circumstances, but we also want the capacity for a creature's main abilities to actually override what the types say. So we need to be able to actually, overwrite what the types say just entirely when we're getting all the abilities of the creature, and that is tricky. It is mostly tricky if you don't want to do a whole ton of looping. Looping is one of the things that, even on a small scale, maybe a creature has 5 abilities, really, really quickly adds up and makes it very, very laggy. So we wanted to try a hash map approach, which basically means that you can only have one of a thing, but then there are things that you do want to be able to have multiples of, for instance, different vulnerabilities and damage reductions and such. So I had to, I haven't done this since, my university days. I had to crack out my notepad and jot down to try and figure out how to do this, because for whatever reason, sometimes you can just type and the answer comes to you, and other times you actually have to, have something visually in front of you to actually understand what you're doing. So that's what I'm going to be describing tonight, and if you can't read it, don't worry, because you probably couldn't understand my handwriting anyways, because I have terrible handwriting. I never handwrite anything, in fairness. The most I tend to handwrite is my own signature, occasionally, 5 or 6 times a year, so no surprise there. But, okay, let's break this down. So, every single creature type, be it sub or super, now has a function attached to it, which is... where are you? Where have you gone? Where have you gone? Add abilities to map. Doesn't currently do anything, they don't actually have an internal list, but that is called whenever we are calling through the ability registry to get all of the abilities of a creature. Now, that is made in a hash map, and as I've just noted, you can only have one value per key in a hash map. It's kind of like, in a list of things that's like by number, you can only have one entry on like line 3, and line 6, and line 7, that kind of thing. You can't have multiple line 3s. That's essentially how the hash map works. The hard part for me was figuring out how we would be able to identify the exact kind of effects that we're looking for without creating a ton of different things. You could have a list and go down them like from top to bottom, and then by the end of it we get the most recent list, which is fine, but that's a loop, and that's not good to have. Especially if you are a complete mad boy and you are playing with literally every single creature type that is available, which is not outright impossible in the slightest bit. You can do that with commands quite easily, in fact, so that would be bad. So, what we do is that all abilities have a registry name. That you could argue that's their name in Christendom, if you like. Their birth name, their like that's what the priest said when they dunked them upside down and whatnot twice in the water, and said, "Praise be yada yada." I don't remember my christening, if you couldn't tell. I'm 100% certain I was christened, come to think of it. Anyways, that registry name is what is chiefly used in that map. It is not used else. Like the registry name is the main thing that we have our big registry of abilities in. So if you get that registry name of an ability, which should always be the exact same thing, you can always retrieve that ability from the registry. Handy and convenient.
Player has joined the game.
Hello, Iris. How you doing? I know there was somebody else, unfortunately I don't have a list of who that was. But yeah. Stop me if I'm talking very quickly, because like I said, programmer brain go burr. It's going to be doing that a fair bit for the start of the stream. Anyways. So, abilities, when they are being put into a map of a creature's abilities, don't use their registry name. They use their map name. And for the majority of ones, for the ones that are like, you can only have this once, they're the same name. But, because we have this function, getMapName, we can actually have a different name in the creature ability map than we do in the registry map. And that then also means that if we have two abilities with the same map name, one can overwrite the other without us having to loop all the way through and add remove stuff. Push-pull. Or push-pop, that's the word. So, the biggest example of where that becomes meaningful is here with damage resistances, because you can have a immunity to cold damage coupled with a weakness to fire damage, for instance. To do that, we need to actually return a different map name to our registry name. So we want new resource location, our mod ID, because we don't really want this to end up as Minecraft, and it's helpful to let people out there also. So let's see, that would be damage resistance underscore, and let's add the string of, let's see, our damage type there. Okay. So now, with that simple change, we can have pretty much one damage resistance ability for every single damage type that exists. And damage types are the next thing I've had to do for this, because I realized that damage sources in Minecraft are really hecking simple. They're really incredibly basic. They literally don't even have any kind of methodology for storing them in memory, because they're meant to just happen and then be done with. So consequently, we needed a way to be able to identify these things, whereas we can't just say, does the damage source name equal in fire versus equal hot floor or such. The fire types are some of the most annoying, because there's like 5 of those. Yeah, I was close, there's 4. 4 exactly. It's just, it's unsustainable. So, instead, I created this, which is damage type. Let me blow that below for you. And basically, this is explicitly for use with damage resistance and damage reductions and such, and it basically allows us to say, here is a given type of damage. Is this particular instance of damage also actually drawn directly from that? So, for instance, big obvious one, Fire. We ask, is it fire damage? If we just take damage type dot fire and say, is damage type that, then we just, yeah. Anything that is marked as fire damage counts as fire damage. Gets a little bit more complicated in some of these because, for instance, Fae are one of our most, like, obvious examples here. Because, if we go up to Fae have damage reduction versus everything that isn't silver, essentially. Damage reduction doesn't apply to energy types like fire and whatnot, but nonetheless. In order to identify that, we have to get the item tier of the item that is doing the attacking, check if it's silver, and if it's not, then we need to also check if it has the silver sheen enchantment. And then we do the whole, like, reducing damage. Whew. So, for that, we have to replicate all of that there, and then we have a similar thing down for all of these different things. Currently, I'm thinking that the equivalent of adamantium, which is in 3.5e, is, like, gonna be netherite. That makes the most sense to me. It's kind of a hell metal, but it has the same kind of visual properties, at least, of adamantium. Right, adamantine? Is it adamantium or adamantine? Because these are used very interchangeably in pop culture. Hey, Aspa. How you doing? Okay. I don't know how feverishly I've just been talking, so... Because it's been like 15 minutes and I feel like I've just given you all a lecture. So do let me know if there's anything I need to explain. Is that the one Wolverine's claws are made of? Yes! And vibranium, or rather a composite of such, if you want to be really nerdy about it, is what Captain America's shield is made from. But adamantium is Wolverine's claws, I think. Okay, I think it is adamantine in Dungeons & Dragons, but okay. So yeah, if we had a creature who had damage reduction that was only overcome by netherite, then we could now actually detect that based on what your held item is. So, unobtainium is a stupid name. Unobtainium is a long-standing name, actually. It's extremely old trope. It's just any material you can't get more of, in essence, or that is ridiculously hard to get. The most entertaining part about the movie Avatar by James Cameron way back when, was that unobtainium was this big central, like, MacGuffin, and nobody cared about it. Like, at no point does the properties of unobtainium become relevant in the slightest bit. It's just sort of like, well, we're here to mine this unobtainium. Mostly we're just here shooting people, so... it's like, it's totally irrelevant. Anyways. Whew. Abilities are registered here in the registry, and then at a certain late point, so that we can recover from any of them being overridden, so you can theoretically have a add-on mod to various oddities that changes how these reductions and resistances work, that kind of thing. We register the listeners, call in Fraser Crane, they're listening, and that basically goes through the entire registry, creates dummies of these particular things, and adds the listeners to them, which means that they then become very miniature event buses. So, with damage resistance, we tack on to our very own damage resistance event, and that allows us to run through all of the damage resistance effects, abilities that this particular creature has, and determine what the corresponding resistance type should be. Phew. Which is not the easiest of things, but well, we do it. There, just clarify that. Now, I should stress, currently, no part of the game actually uses the system. Nothing declares itself as having an ability, nothing adds or removes abilities. It's all just here waiting to go. So consequently, we are today going to be trying, fingers crossed, to get any small part of this working. And there are 3 major abilities that currently exist inside of what is the type system's effects. There is damage reduction, which the Fae have to anything that isn't silver. There is damage resistance, which a whole ton of things have. That's by far the most common thing in here, in fact. And lastly, but certainly by no means leastly, we have incorporeality, which is only added by the incorporeal subtype currently, but we could add that to anything to make sure that we get, like, that ability added, so that could be fun as well. I suppose the bad guy just needs to be the bad guy. It's just Dances with Wolves. It's not a very complex story, is Avatar. James Cameron likes to paint it as being something dramatically more than that, but it's not a very complex story in the slightest bit. Anyways. So, we need to give all of these types a set of abilities that they will then add to the map when they are going through. So, let's start by giving ourselves a list. And then we need a function to actually give him, to actually add an ability. So right down here. And we don't much care if we have somehow a repeat in here, for the moment at least. Because we're just storing them as a list, so that we can just then loop through and add them all. Again, you don't want to, you ideally want to avoid loops, but sometimes you just gotta have them. Now I believe we also want to have enum creature type and return this, because that will mean that we can do them inline. We don't need to worry too much about that. So let's see. The very simplest example here that we could possibly come up with would probably be the fire type. So, how do we want to build this in? It won't let us do it inline, so we'll probably have to do this in the type handler looking at it. But that's fine, because the type handler already does a bunch of stuff. So, can breathe air, can critical hit, can poison, can paralysis, all these other things. You don't really get abilities that mess with that, but later on, who knows. So let's just move from here over to here real quick. Yeah, I can never remember if you can do inlines on enums, but evidently not. But again, we can handle it. Okay, so there is add that, and that's a private list, or a file list. We want to be able to add a getter. Okay, and then down to our add abilities. For every ability in our type handlers. Let's see, what's the function for getting a type handler? I cannot for life remember. Get handler. Get abilities. We want to put in the map ability map name with the ability. The ability also includes MBT data as an object, so consequently we can happily store special information. So for instance, we could have a lich with like a phylactery ability and it just teleports you to a specific given point, that kind of thing. Now I should note, currently all the abilities that we're working with today are passive. These are things that are active whether or not you care about activating them. Later on, not much later on, mind you, we will be adding activated abilities. My mouth is running faster than my tongue. Oh goody, that's a good start to the evening. Which will mean that we'll be able to actually give these to players and they'll be able to do special things with them. And from there, we're going to be going to more or less what the Origin system does by itself, which is we're going to be having a JSON data pack data, and that'll comprise here is a species, plus here is a template. So for instance, you could play a zombie troll. For that you would set to troll and then apply template zombie. And that'll get things really buzzing. To a degree, I believe, substantially beyond what Origin itself does. Because, okay, I said I would get this, I suppose. I might as well do it now. Origins is good. I will hasten to say this quite happily. Origins is done very well. But there are certain limitations and certain design problems with Origins that I personally, at least, have identified. which is you can be whatever you like. You can have whatever special abilities you like, you can have any modifications to your health, you can play the game exactly however you like, and that's wonderful, that's great. It's purely data pack driven, that lets you have a lot of freedom of choice there. Conversely, however, because you can have all of this freedom, there's really no constraints that could be put on you. There is no way of knowing if a shulk on one server works the same as a shulk on a different server, and I think the biggest hanging point I have for me is because what origins are available on a given server can differ wildly, you can't actually build in interactions between them or with them at all. So you can't, for instance, have a weapon that works better against the aquatic mermaid kind of origin. You can't have a ability that works differently if it is used on a like slimeling or whatever it is. And that also, like, the fact that you can change up the properties of every single origin means that there's no real guarantee going up against somebody who has a specific origin that what you have planned will work. So this is where I think the various oddities type system, and now the ability system that is starting up, is going to be on several levels, but also quite literally, game changer. Because we have all of the capacity to have all these different abilities and such, and we have all of this capacity to have people be whatever the heck they like. But there is one part of this whole system that does not ever change, and that is what the creature types do. And your creature types are baked into your species, they're modified by your template, but they're nonetheless always the same thing. Undead always means undead, and undead always vulnerable to holy damage. And undead always vulnerable to smite damage, and fire types always have cold vulnerability. And that means that whilst everybody can be whatever the hell they like on every single multiplayer server running this system, you can always go into a fight knowing ahead of time, okay, they're this type, which means they will be weak to this, so we should use that. You could maybe like play around with it and like take some gambles, but bare minimum you will always know of something that works or does not work. You will always have that certainty. And much as with the case of various equipment, we can actually have things that directly interact with these types, hence we have another point of like reliability. So a player fighting a Fae will probably always want to take a silver or silver sheen weapon in with them, because they will know ahead of time that Fae have at least some kind of damage reduction, and it's probably overcome by silver. That adds a whole ton to the game space, because otherwise Origins kind of just boils down to everybody playing their own individual game. There's not really much interaction there, not really much cohesion. It's a good mod, I will hasten to restate, but that's just kind of my problem with it, and it's why I'm working more with various oddities to try and just, like, I guess compete with it to some degree. But being able to have, like, 18 different types of undead players running around, and still just be able to say, okay, this is a sanctified zone, therefore undead cannot enter it, and all of them are affected by that regardless of their otherwise abilities, is good. I like that. That is meaningful. It is good to have some degree of stability in your system. Anyways, where was I? Ah yes, abilities to map, we got that part going. So now we just need to add some abilities. So let's just drag this back over here. Okay, and we're gonna start with fire, because fire is fairly straightforward. So, add ability, new ability, damage, and resistance. And what are the input values for this? I forget. A type, well, a pair of types, actually. So we want damage type as well. This is a little bit hackneyed because, bleh. Phew. Yeah, let me know if I'm boring anybody by just info dumping. gonna come out of this stream tonight with a very sore throat, I'm sure. Tends to happen. Okay, I can probably make this a bit easier by having this be. That's easier than asking people to remember numbers and indices. Alright. That should all be ready to go. So you can have a vulnerability, an immunity, or a weakness to fire, but you, every time you try to add a different damage resistance effect of fire, then it will overwrite the existing one that comes from your types. Which technically means that we could add the weakness to fire, or a vulnerability to fire, to a fire-type creature, and it would be fine, but that's okay. At that level, you're just, like, hecking with it anyways. Okay. So, we want damage type fire, and enum damage resist immune. Okay, real straightforward. Next, I'm just going to comment out the part that already exists to say that they are immune to fire. And from there, we hope everything works. Because I've already gone over to the type bus, and formerly it went through all of your types, asked for their resistances and whatnot with a given thing. Now, we fire off the damage resistance event, which is new, and that gets caught by a bunch of things, but among it should be the actual damage resistance ability. Go through all of the damage resistance abilities of the particular entity, and we check if any of them apply, if they are the same damage type as the ability, and that should then mean that everything works fine. Hopefully. Just gonna add a quick little thing here. But yeah, I have been coding up a storm today and yesterday, and well, yesterday I didn't do much, I was figuring it all out. But, oh boy, oh boy. Okay, let's put a sys out in here. And let's boot it and see what breaks, because I've done a lot of coding that has absolutely no visible output until we boot, until we were all the way through here. So this could go horribly wrong, and quite likely will, very quickly. But just while that's booting, there's a fair few abilities.
Player has joined the game.
Non-binary, hello. There's a lot of abilities in the 3.5e version of Dungeons & Dragons, which is our main foundation point for building various oddities. And there's a lot of custom ones between creatures that we'll probably be trying to implement at least in some part, but here is all of the major recurring abilities in the entirety of Dungeons & Dragons Core Edition 3.5. There's a few here, you'll notice, marked with a red X, which are ones I have no intention of trying to implement. First and foremost amongst those, I think, is natural weapons. There's a lot of creatures that have claw attacks, bite attacks, tail attacks, sting attacks, wing attacks, sometimes, that sort of thing. And it makes sense to be able to pick what attack you're going to be using right before you use it in, like, a D&D, but D&D is turn-based, and a single turn is ostensibly 6 seconds of in-game time, but it can be literal hours in real-world time, whereas Minecraft is live. It's a real-time game, so consequently we have to be able to make our decisions at like a snap kind of moment. And having to go through a selection of what natural weapons you have, it's just not worth it. It's too slow. It's too sluggish. It's too much. One of the other notable things that I have no intention of implementing here is the swallow whole ability. Because I have no intention of adding a vor to Minecraft. If there's any chance that a player can be given a vor ability, I want no part of it. Oh, there was a problem. What happened? Illegal arguments. No enum. Okay, right. Right. Yeah, that's a problem. If you hadn't guessed, I guess. Where are you? There. You are static, so what's your problem? Right. I need to remember how we registered other things. Because I know I've done that before. But yeah, that's just a complaint with string serializable. Not the worst thing we could have had happen. Command, entity settlement. I don't see any mention of it here. Do I need to put this in its own class? Is that it? Probably, potentially. It's a static, but it should be fine. This is one of those bugs that you don't really get much of a description of. No enum constant. Well. Okay, next question. Where do I put that? Visibility will be changed to package. Will be changed to package. That's fine. Where did it just go is the next question, I guess. There you are. There's damage type. Yeah, there's also telepathy, which is just... Telepathy just raises a question. How are we already communicating in Minecraft? Because players can be kilometers away and still be able to have a real-time conversation. No problems whatsoever. Okay, let's see if it still has a problem now. Every Minecraft character is simply telepathic already. Precisely. Like, my personal headcanon when it comes to writing stuff for Minecraft is that, the chat text is akin to sign language. So most Minecraft players don't actually, like, talk so much as they sign. But the fact that even that is able to be heard, like, on the other side of the world and then some, including in other dimensions, I feel like adding a telepathy ability is just redundant at that point. It's obsolete already. Oh, it's done the thing again. Okay, what is going on? We need damage type and whatnot to be serializable, so what's going wrong with them? happens right at the start of this. Wow. Okay. That is your problem. Or it exists implicitly. Yes, I'm trying to make it not break implicitly. I don't see anything that registers this as constants. I guess we just need to do something a little bit hinky, but bleh, okay. Okay. See if we've just created a different problem. Getting to the main menu, our current goal. Is it a different ability now? Nope, it's gonna actually change this to from string. Lesson learned, just don't use get value, or value of. Okay, what's your problem? Nope, that's fine. There. Okay. Hopefully, that's all the things that need it. Will we see the main menu load properly before my first break? That's the question here. But yeah, also, like, mechanically, a swallow whole ability would be really complicated. Because I would have to teleport the target to a different dimension, essentially a stomach dimension. And then I would need to track how much damage they're doing to the surrounding environment. And then when they finally deal enough damage, I would need to damage the creature that originally put them there, and then teleport them to be adjacent to that creature. And what happens if the player just doesn't try to escape? I'm gonna have to be dealing, like, constant damage to them. And then I'm going to, like, if they don't die for whatever reason, maybe they've got really good armor in modded environments, who knows, they can just set up camp inside of you. And that's really weird conceptually. Okay. We appear to have gotten to our main world here, so Let's boot into this one, where I don't think anything particularly important is happening, just in case anything destroys itself. And then we're going to give ourselves the fire subtype, and see if that actually does anything. Okay. I am not translucent, that's interesting. Interesting, so I've already broken something, because I moved incorporeality to be checking abilities rather than types. But okay. That's a client-side thing, so that should hopefully be fine. So let's see, types, set, dev 2, we'll say humanoid, fire. Because when I said humanoid, but apparently I'm unknown. Fine by me. As long as the important part right now is we have the fire. Okay. That's a good sign. Let's check the log. Nice. Okay. That means we have a resistance effect that's actually running properly. There's obviously some limits here, but that's a good start because that is an ability running by its own event. Grand. I can also have it like make you not be set on, not be constantly on fire from that, but not a huge concern. Okay. So now we go through all of these different types and we start adding resistances. Because we've established resistance works. Phew. Hurrah. Okay, we can get rid of that then. Add ability, new ability, damage, resistance, damage type, cold, and damage resist, vulnerable. There. There isn't currently anything that actually uses a lot of these damage types, so they're a little bit, like, no risk, but it's a-comin', it's a-comin'. Helps if you can spell. Spelling in this economy? I know, right? Imagine. Yeah, the next one we have to test is damage reduction. And damage reduction is one that you typically only have one of. You can have multiple damage resistances or vulnerabilities, but damage reduction, or DR as it's frequently abbreviated, is typically you only have the one. It would get very complicated if you had multiple. This is probably another ability. Immunity affected by spells. But that's a more complex thing that we'll do later. Hey, so, how you doing? there should be some more resistances in here. Yeah, set fire resist vulnerable, there we go. Is that vulnerable to fire? Yes, because that's plants. Might surprise people to know that I don't actually remember every single ability of every single creature type. Vulnerable to holy. Okay. Shocking, truly. Well, let me see. There are 15 super types and 16 subtypes currently. So, me being able to remember every single one would be impressive, certainly. Okay, I think that's all of the resistances we can find out real quick. I'll go on my break by getting the list of resistances and just remove again. Everything it says add resistance or set fire resistance, just get rid of it. Don't need this, I don't think, either. Because resistance is now handled by the abilities. And if that causes any problems, then we know where to look. None whatsoever. Good. Okay. Next up, we need to do damage reduction, but first, I'm gonna go on my break, so I will catch you all in about 10 minutes.
about appeasing the crowd. Rather, it's about tending to the broken parts inside of ourselves. We create things as a reflection of this struggle, to study our perception of self. Ben Wave isn't necessarily a thing you achieve. Rather, it is a state of mind which you all comes from an understanding that ideas aren't static, but fluid.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a nice little break there. So we left off with our damage resistances being fully functional, at least as far as we can tell, which means now that all of the damage resistances from different types is handled by the ability system rather than the type system route. So, I really need to slow down. My brain is going at like 200% right now. So now we're working on damage reduction, which is typified by the Fae right here. So let's just add our ability. Also, hey Ace, 2 questions, 2 fire. Damage type silver, which is our exception, otherwise value of 4 for how much it reduces. Damage reduction, by the by, does not affect energy damage, so harming potions, fire, that kind of thing doesn't affect that. Does affect pretty much every kind of like melee damage, so bear that in mind. Ooh, I should add projectile, shouldn't I? For now, let's keep that. Okay, once again, just gonna comment that out until I know that that works. So the way that damage reduction works is sort of the opposite of how damage resistance works. Whereas damage resistance only applies against certain types of damage, damage reduction applies against everything but a certain selection of types. So consequently, if you have damage reduction 5 overcome by silver, which is the typical of Fae, that 5 damage reduction applies to everything except for silver weapons, or things with a silver sheen enchantment, anyways. So now, that should also apply to falling. So if I give myself the if I give myself the type of Fae and then teleport myself about 6 blocks up, then we should see a reduction down to 1 point of damage. Ordinarily that would be about 3, I think. Could also just do 4, but yeah, either way. I have to say, this is kind of exciting. This is a lot of progress to do in the span of a couple of hours. Reminded about silver skeletons from Mo creatures. Okay, be gone. So, once again, types set dev 2 Fae, and we'll say fire as well, why not? Fire type Fae, there we go. So, if I TP up 4, I should take no damage. Grand. If I TP up 6, I should take a couple. Nope. Okay, good. How about, let's see, it's 10 blocks to take 4 damage. Ish. I might have not. That might have been including the 3, but yeah. Okay. Looking good. And I am regaining health. Good, because that's still handled by types. Okay. So we do seem to have that. The next part that we'll need to test is whether we still take damage normally from somebody wielding a silver weapon. Now, I don't currently actually include a silver material to make a weapon out of, I just have the silver sheen enchantment, so I'm gonna have to improvise slightly. So let's get me a diamond helmet. I say me, let's get somebody very shortly a diamond helmet. And let's also get a wooden sword. Just so I don't die immediately. And let's quickly set the time to midnight. think that's the one I want. I'm not 100%. Oh, right, of course. I used villagers. Bad. Bad to test zombie. I need a fence. I need a fence or something. These rings are basically anti-fey mobs on a lore perspective, since they're covered in silver and have 2 silver swords. Yeah, that wouldn't be pleasant. Okay. Let's try that again. Can I convince you to hold this? Apparently not. Let's see. Can pick up loot. Right, not can pick up loot. Gotcha. Yep, 1 second. Just giving you a hat. I hope. Grand. Okay. And give this the silver sheen enchantment, which hangs around for about an hour, then goes away. So you hang on to that. Good. Okay. And just make sure I'm fully healed up for this. Okay, yep, that is definitely full health. Where is he? Currently that way. Okay. Hi. Ow. That certainly feels like full damage. Yep. I think that worked. So a zombie with a wooden sword did a lot more to us per attack there than falling 10 blocks. So I think that works. Of course, to actually properly test that, we would also want to compare with a zombie that has no such item. So let's see. Is it held items? Hand items? One of the two, surely. Armor items, hand items, there we go. Okay, so let's just give you a regular old wooden sword. And compare. Painful, but feels considerably reduced. Actually feels more about the same. Interesting, interesting. Okay, let's have a poke and see what we find then. So let's see, if it's not an energy source, which it should just rate as mundane, or actually it should rate as wooden, then go for the whole list. If it is not... oh, hang on, that should be... that? A heart compared to the silver 2 hearts or so, yeah. 2 hearts... 1 heart is 2 health, so it should, by a reduction of 4, it should be, significantly reduced. Obviously, I could just do the obvious thing and just like dial it up to huge numbers here just to make sure that it's not going to do anything, but that'd make it much easier to test actually. 40. For temporary testing purposes, Fae now have a damage reduction of 40. That's probably a bit cleaner for defining it. Okay, so now we will have a very clear and obvious demonstration of whether or not it's working. In that we will take damage or we won't. And it is very much all or nothing here. Okay, so not silvered. No damage at all. Just perfectly fine. Okay, next, enchant you with Silver Sheen, and now we should start to actually take damage. Okay. We are definitely a problem having. So what's going wrong there? That's a problem? Yeah, having unavoidable damage. Well, lots of things have unavoidable damage reduction, but in this case it's supposed to be overcome by silver, so what's going on? Trying to think here. Zombie wants a refund for their Silver Sheen. Well, they can just wait an hour. It'll be fine. Okay. So it is applying the damage reduction, but it's skipping over the fact where it's only supposed to do it against non-silvered weapons. Because if it matches as silver, it should say, no, we can't. So if it is not a damage type that's listed in the exceptions, then we say it does still apply, but if it doesn't go, if it goes through the whole list of exceptions and says that it does apply to all of them, then the damage reduction doesn't apply. So, where's my damage type? Let's see, we get the held item. If the item tier doesn't equal null and it contains the word silver as part of its name, then it's counted as a silver weapon. Otherwise, we check if the Silver Sheen enchantment is on the item stack of a level greater than 0. So, what's going wrong there? That seems quite straightforward to me. Just grab that. Yeah, that should be good. Should be, being the operative word. If it was good, it would be working already. Is it maybe you rooted in that? Let's have a look. Instance of entity damage source, get true source, attacker does not equal null attacker instance of living entity, held item main hand, hand is not empty, run the predicate. That should all be good then. Is it maybe the entity damage source part? Well, we'll find out. Keep an eye on the console. So the zombie has silver sheen, which should mean that their wooden sword counts as silver. Hi there, how you doing? Mind hitting me? Somehow, this weapon is not counting as being silver. Interesting. Question being why? I wonder if it is that. Let's check zombie. Because zombie has to have something called attack entity as mob down here, which determines when they attack things and applies all the enchantments based on it. Cause mob damage, okay. Is an entity damage source. Good to know. So we know it's not that line. Is the true source of that then the damage source? Okay, the true source is the damage source. Good. Yep. So that will get us a living entity, from whom we can then get the main hand, which I believe is what the zombie was using there. Yep, get held item main hand. We know it's not empty because it's actually hitting us and hurting us. So then we apply the predicate that we are given and return whether it was true, in which case we should say a weapon is silvered. See if that tells us anything. How is everybody tonight, by the way? Don't think I've asked yet. I suppose I could change it to wood. See if that counts. So if we never see that first line checking such and such for silver, then we know it's not making it into the actual silver predicate, which means it's part of the applying the held item predicate function. If we do... Yep, all we see is applying damage reduction, which means we're not seeing the actual damage type get checked. Okay. Checking damage type never got called. Wait, is energy? How are we getting an energy type from this thing? I bet I know what it is. Okay, it's probably identifying from the damage type that it's magic long before it gets to silver. Magic is an energy type so that you're not protected. Does it get display name, return the item stack name, or the item's custom name? I think both, depending on whether they have one. But that's not the problem here, because we don't even get this far, because I betcha it hits magic first. Which could mean that it is as simple to fix as just moving those to there. That could literally be the saving grace of this thing. Now later on, we're going to actually be adding multiple damage types. So an enchanted weapon is an enchanted diamond weapon should register as being both diamond and magic, rather than just being one. So that is a limitation of the current system. But okay, now we know where the problem was. The problem was this line right here. Quite probably. Doesn't mean that you can use the anvil to say silver, silver, bow-bilver as a wooden sword name. You could, but it wouldn't register as a silver weapon, because we don't check the name. Okay. Now you should heck me up. Yep, yes you do. Oh. That was big ouch. Yeah, there we are. Gets the text display component, which is... Weapon is silvered, so now it's working perfectly fine. Ooh, ouch. Oof, ouch. My bones. Okay, good. It is actually going to just return that. Okay. Let's change that a little bit to main damage type. And then we want a list of damage types. And in there, we will basically go through this whole thing and find every applicable damage type. Actually, email set to the trick. Go. So we'll go through all of that, and it'll define whether or not what we're being hit with counts for our damage reduction. Probably... I'm trying to think, how do we... If we do that, we'll find out that you're, say, for instance, hooking up an instant damage potion, but you're also holding a netherite sword. Like, maybe you hook it, immediately change. Do you then... Should you then also count... Like, should the damage count as being netherite as well? The answer in theory is no. Also, the first thing that would count as is netherite, which would mean it wouldn't pierce by this current ruling. I suppose we could just ask, does the damage in question bypass armor? That'll probably be a much simpler way of going about it, I think. Yeah, let's just do that. That seems much, much easier. Unblockable? Is that the one I'm looking for? Let's find out. Unblockable. Yep, there we are. So if the source is not unblockable, then check all that stuff. That should save us some hiccups, I think. And then we get all of the damage types applicable to that particular piece of damage, and then we call that. Okay. So that should be good to go then. Because the next thing I have to figure out is, what do I implement next? Well, obviously there's bugs with incorporeality, but there's a lot. Fair few of these are tied to the spell system and such. A few that I'd really like to do are dark vision and low light vision, but they would require tinkering and tampering with the vanilla Minecraft lighting engine, because if I just like add a flat increase to the brightness of a given area based on whether you have low light vision or dark vision or such, then areas that are at 0 are still going to be basically at 0. If I just increase the scale based on low light to dark vision and such, it's still going to look terrible. It'll just be the same thing, essentially. The effect of low light vision is that you can see twice as far in poor light as like normal creatures, and dark vision is you can see in the dark but it's black and white. It's really hard to do that. And then, of course, the way that Minecraft does it is it basically just turns off the lighting engine if you have the night vision status effect, so it's not grand. Anyways, I gave you a hat for a reason, so let's get some brightness up in here. Okay, all healed up. Does that count? Yes, yes it does. Oof. Oof, ouch. Okay, you come back here a second so I can get your data. And modify you to not have that enchantment. Where did I mess up there? Oh, modify as opposed to merge. There we go. Let's see. It's Minecraft wooden sword. Count 1B. There. Now you've just got a regular old wooden sword, and I have damage reduction 40. So I am fine. Okay. Very good. I think a caveat that we can apply here is that if the event, after all of that, is 0, then just cancel it, which should also stop us from, like, getting the damage sound and whatnot. Personally like having dark vision, but being able to see in shades of a certain color. Well, yes, white. That's how black and white works. But the trouble is implementing that. Partially because I'm terrible at graphics programming. I've said that numerous times before. And partially because I didn't really know how we do that. We would basically have to implement a substantially more flexible lighting engine. And Lord knows I am not up to building a lighting engine. Certainly not for rebuilding one. Ugh. But okay. So we got our damage going, we've got our damage reduction going, we've got our resistances going. Last thing I think that we'll need, oh yes, of course, we can also take this whole chunk out of here. Quite happily, like so. Let's see, actions is fine, deal with that. Can spell effect is its own ability, more or less. I think that's basically all of the abilities that we can deal with right now in here. The exception being incorporeal. Which it just occurred to me doesn't actually have the ability incorporeal, and that's why we didn't appear to be translucent. Ah, that could be it. Optifine dynamic lights such as lasers or not advanced enough. No, that would be advanced enough, it's just heck if I could build it. Okay, so we add the ability incorporeality to incorporeal. That should then mean that when we add the incorporeal type, we are semi-transparent and everything. Now we are going to have to do something later on with synchronizing abilities on different ends so that that actually works. Otherwise, you might have situations where you appear to be transparent to yourself, but to nobody else, and that extends to different abilities, like trying to deal damage to somebody with a fire effect, but they have fire immunity, but your side of things doesn't know that, so the server doesn't do any damage to them, but you still necessarily see some weirdness. So you want to keep those things concentrated, but we should be able to manage that. Because these are very, very light little things. Hi there. So let's see, types list of dev, currently defined as Fae Fire. So let's add to dev incorporeal. Perfect. Okay, can I walk through the wall? I absolutely can. Hooray! So that works perfectly. Thinking of toning down the incorporeality a bit, because that seems maybe a bit much. It's kind of hard to make out what we are. Incorporeality, by the way, took forever to figure out. And I will say, I did heavily reference the Phantom Code from Origins to try and get incorporeality working. Because they had a very nuanced and interesting way of doing it, because previously I have just used, like, set you to no clip, but if you set a creature to no clip, gravity still affects them, so they just fall through the world. The way the Origins did it was that it made it so instead of turning on no clip, you just don't have a collision box with a lot of blocks, so it works very nicely that way. But okay, so incorporeality works, damage resistance works, damage reduction works. We can set that down to 4 now. Okay. Very good, very good. So that is all of the abilities that are currently built in to the type system. So, what do we implement next? Flight is the obvious thing. Currently we have one small bug with burrowing, which is an ability of the Earth subtype, which is that the damage progress, well, the mining progress is accelerated on stone and dirt type blocks, and that seems to work fine, but then it just sort of rolls over and takes the normal amount of mining time, which is weird. That shouldn't be happening. So I'm not 100% saying what's going on with that, but also flight is an issue, because we've discussed at length with the patrons who got to see this firsthand, that just having your options be nothing or creative mode flight is really, really, really overpowered. And the way that I marked that is that by default, air subtype creatures have a fly speed usually of perfect quality. Perfect being the creature can perform almost any aerial maneuver it wishes, it moves through the air as well as a human moves over smooth ground. I determined that to mean essentially creative flight. The creature can fly as adroitly as a small bird. I consider that to be about the level of, like, an elytra. I have an intermediary between those two that might make it work better, which is a slow falling effect, so you fall down much slower, but nonetheless you do fall down, and essentially a gradually recharging multi-jump ability. So you can jump maybe 5 times in rapid succession, and then you have to wait for those jumps to recharge, and that allows you to gradually increase your altitude, but you've got to, like, actually put in effort to hold up, like, to maintain a certain altitude. You have to essentially flap, which I think would work, but would also be a hell of a thing, aka Flappy Bird. Yes, the Flappy Bird style of flight is exactly how I've described it. And it would certainly be possible, it's just very difficult to implement. Like, it takes a lot of legwork to get that going. I don't think we'll get that done in a day. Let's see, what's another thing that we could maybe do here? Something on the easy list. A breath weapon? We've got damage reduction, we've got cold immunity. Etherealness. Evasion and improved evasion. In D&D, those are essentially modifiers to your reflex saves, saying that if you succeed in the save, you take no damage as opposed to taking half damage, or if you fail it, you take half damage, that kind of thing. But I don't know 100% how we would do that. We could argue that it would be like, it's like the Ultra Instinct of Enderman, where they can just, like, immediately dodge any attack that comes in that happens to be a projectile. But, fast healing we can definitely go in there. Fire immunity is already there. Incorporality we're done. Invisibility is just straightforward. What do we think, everybody? Scent is an interesting one. I've marked it as very difficult on this list, because the hardest, like, it's not hard to just render where creatures have been. The hard part is storing enough of their recent locations that you don't create a huge memory cost, especially because the client has to be aware of it. Although in theory you could have, like, I don't know, some kind of, like, perimeter meter on you. So if you, like, if creatures are walking around, you just get, like, a reading of, like, it smells mostly like undead over here, or there doesn't seem to be some kind of scent here. Trails mod? I'm loath to reference entire mods, but yeah. Let's see. Some kind, I want to see some kind of activated ability here. Something that we can go for in our final hour of the evening. How many creatures have invisibility as an effect, I wonder? I mean, it's fairly straightforward to implement, that's for sure. Let's just add that. It extends from ability. Okay. More or less identical to this, except we actually do something. Incorporality doesn't actually have any listeners it needs. You've sent your reminder to the character Shiramiya's way of detecting magic. His nose knows where the magic is hidden. Okay, so get the register name, that's fine. Yep, all good. Add listener. We do need a listener. Okay. And the listener in this context would just be Living Tick, I believe. Do we want to do this with the effect of invisibility, or could we just turn off rendering? I think we just turn off... I don't think we ignore visibility. I think we actually use the effect, because otherwise it gets a little ridiculous. Anytime that you just turn off rendering, it should be a matter of the person has no chance of perceiving something. I think invisibility makes it harder for mobs to detect you. To a significant degree. Detection, like, stealth mechanics in vanilla Minecraft are not very complex. Really. They're really not. You change one number and it changes it for everything, more or less. Visibility also isn't tiered, so it doesn't really matter what level you are, like what level it is. Amplifier should just be 0, I think. Yep. Show particles false. So let's, for the moment, suggest that let's say air types have this ability. We will be moving flight and such to its own ability, but not right now. Okay. So, if we are an air type in our test world, we should just get the invisibility effect for 10 seconds. Like, per it. Yeah, I do like the idea of the Flappy Bird style of flight. The question is that better or worse than an Elytra? And is it game-breakingly busted if you get that long before you get Elytra? Because, like, when you have essentially creative mode flight, getting an Elytra once you get to the end is trivial. The Ender Dragon fight is trivial. Oh, I didn't add the listener, that's why. So it wasn't able to fire anyways. Doing it this way, by the way, means that I can add and remove different abilities without having to, without having to manage a central bus or create a billion different event listeners. I just have the listener be inside of the ability that cares about it. Okay, I appear to be invisible. Yep. Okay. And if I remove that, it's just ticking down. Okay. Interesting that I seem to be having some trouble up here. There we go. Perfect. I kind of prefer to have particles, though. Given the option, I would kind of prefer to have particles. Just because then it's not ludicrous. If you can't see the particles, then a creature that has invisibility is essentially, for all intents and purposes, undetectable unless you show bounding boxes. I still kind of like the idea of flight evolving as you do advancements. Tying stuff to advancements like that is really hit or miss. Especially when you're taking mod packs. Like, there was an example quite recently where I enchanted one thing using the Soul Enchanter, and I got 6 different enchantments from completely different mods. Like, I can understand it, but it's... As a progression system, it leaves a lot to be desired. But okay, I will be back in about 10 minutes, and we're going to try and figure out an activated ability. Hopefully. See if I can dig one up. Catch you then. Welcome back, everybody, to the final hour of our evening tonight, and I think I have a decent candidate for what we'll be using as the basis of our first activated ability, and that is the Dimension Door ability, or the Blink ability, or either way, of the Blink Dog. The Blink Dog, if you're not familiar, is a very large doggo, usually good aligned, and generally very fun to have around, but also their main thing is that they teleport a whole ton. So, we're gonna try and build a teleport ability, which seems like a pretty simple one, but it'll also require activation and theoretically contextual relevance, meaning where you're pointing. So let's see if we can figure this out. First things first, let's just have an ability that makes us teleport wildly. You heard Lick Dog? No. Let's see, you call it... Teleport 2? Teleport Pulse, I guess? If we can get an activated ability out tonight, we will have an ability system that will be capable of doing a whole ton of stuff. My plan with abilities is there'll be a button you can click to open up like a radial menu of them, and if there's more than is usually displayed upon that menu, then you'll be able to scroll through the whole list. But you'll also be able to bind them to like a set number of favorite keys, so that you will then not have to open up that entire window to go through the whole thing and find the ability you want to use. You can just put it on your favorites and off you go. Which should make using them significantly more friendly in like a combat scenario. That, however, will absolutely not be done tonight. Okay. What is your concern? Oh, of course. I'll leave these ideas about how flight could evolve here, so you no longer need to think about it. Floppy birds acquired on spawn, elytra flight acquired with a terrible fortress, creative flight acquired with free the end, spectator flight? No, that's even worse. You don't never give anybody creative flight, like spectator flight. Dear God, that's even worse than creative. Acquired with how did we get here? No. Giving players unlimited no clip, as in spectator flight, is a terrible idea. Whether or not that's hard to get, never do that. Okay. Not the no clip, but the ability to speed up and slow. That's also bad. The ability to speed up and slow down their flight speed. Okay, slow, not so bad. Speed up, though, especially with Spectator, it doesn't have a limit. Or at least it has an extremely high limit, and that can be terrifying on servers. Just no. Like, if giving players creative flight is already, like, a highly controversial and dangerous issue. Spectator elements are a terrifying idea. But okay, we need... Whoop, void... do teleport, I guess. And this would be, I guess, a living update event? So if they have this ability... And now we will generate all the chunks. Yeah, you can turn off chunk generation with spectators, but it would just be... Oi, having to do that would be terrible. Alright, so if, for the hot minute, we're just gonna say if the creature is sneaking. We'll be adding a key binding shortly. Then, we're just gonna try and move them to wherever they're looking. So let's see. That's okay. Kind of why you did pair it with possibly the hardest advancement, which is like having all 24 effects on at the same time on your person. The fact that it is achievable means that people will do it, especially if there's a strong reward. An effect that dangerous for a server should not be achievable. Like, not without admin commands, at least. But okay. We need a raid... Well, we need to get the eye position, and then we need to interpolate from to get where we're looking at. You have that achievement on the CBH server? I'm not surprised, actually. Like, Dave and I on the CBH server both have weapons and abilities that allow us to, like, steal potion effects. So I'm not surprised. That is exactly how it happened? Yeah, I thought as much. Okay, 1F gets us to that. Gotcha. Nasty Apotheosis boss and Magic Siphon. Yep. This is what I mean. You've always got to be careful, especially when you get into modded environments. I can just multiply it or scale it. Will that was a trick? Hopefully. Let's give it a range of, say, 16. Let's also normalize it, just to be on the safe side. It's probably normalized already. Bleh. Ray trace result. Starting vector, the eye position, end position, the look position. Block position. I don't know if these are even necessary. Shouldn't be. Can't think of why they would be. Get type equals type dot block. crosses out spectator flight. That said, Intangible did a kind of spectator flight and it was dope. Oh, really? Set position to trace hill. We need the hit vec, don't we? Okay. You died if you didn't find a body to possess on a clock and you couldn't take your own body. Interesting. So it's sort of like Magic Jar. That is interesting. Okay. Gonna tell you right now, but as soon as I start using this, it's going to make some very hectic stuff. But we will be fixing that shortly. Let's attach this for the moment to Outsider. You took over a creeper and then Sue killed you. Aww. Yeah, flight, like, special movement mechanics, especially when the vast majority of enemies that the player will face don't have those mechanics, you gotta be really careful. Creative mode flight is all well and good when it's only used for, like, building or such, not so much in combat against melee-only creatures. Okay. You miss smart moving? There might still be a version of it, I'm not sure. Let me have a poke. Let's see, smart moving... Last updated, 2016. I stand corrected. There is, however, also Smart Moving 2019, which was created and last updated in September of 2019. Same day. One single file. Near as I can tell. Yeah. Pity. Pity. Okay. Types, sets, dev to outsider. So, if I shift, we should teleport. Or crash. Either or. A problem happened in the ray trace. So evidently some of these values are needed. Is there like a different ray trace? No, there isn't. Okay. Let's get an example of this then. Teleported out of space-time, I guess. Like, what is it asking me for here? Better question, do I not just have a function for this? Entity look. There we are. Total XP. Entity look targets. Gets me an entity. That gets me an entity, but they probably also have the functions I'm looking for in here. Head position, look position, yes, all good. Doesn't actually ray trace. Interesting. I'd forgotten that. Okay, so what do I need to give this? Is there anything that even just works the way I'm thinking of? I must have written this in 112. Smart moving was somehow client-side so you could climb around on servers. That sounds busted as hell. Like, a client-side mod that alters how you function on servers is the definition of hacking. Like, probably good-natured in that case, but the definition of hacking. Okay. You sucked at parkour? Yeah, imagine, like, a server that does parkour as a big thing, and then you just come in with a smart moving mod. Oof. Okay, can see. It's probably quite close. Let's get the teleporting part of this working so that we can then get the activation working. It takes a position, a shape, and a block state. Is Ray Trace Util still a thing? Nope. Ray Trace Helper. Nope. God, what's an example of here I could use? Tanya probably has something. Britannia, I have found in 1.16, is basically the smorgasbord of references for code. Provided you can find the right line of code that you're looking for. Even with smart moving, you never went to the parkour server, it's not your thing, you just let it help you go around your mines. Fair. Interesting. There is literally a function for this now. Because it's when you get the pick block. Huh. Interesting. Do we have partial ticks in this function? Nope, so we'll just assume 0. What does that return for us? A ray trace result. Okay. Guess I'll take it. Let's have a look at this real quick. Eye position look. There's the end point. Ray trace blocks creates a context. Okay. Interesting. Make sure to test this while looking at the underside of a block. Many a teleportation mod has killed you by shoving you into the ceiling. Oh yeah. This will not be the final form of this ability. This is just us in the last hour of the stream trying to get an activated ability to work, when we've only just gotten the ability system itself to work. What we can do after this is, like, add some fuzziness so that if it detects, like, block collision and such, it picks a random position around, or tries to find one at least where you don't end up in collisions. And if it can't find one, then you just get splinched, I guess. Okay. There we go. Okay, yeah. Here's the silliness. If we are aiming at a point that is less than 16 blocks away, we are constantly teleporting. Meow. Meow. Whip. I done goofed slightly. Can I kindly... Hello? Just give me a... That's more than 6. Of course, this is perfect, actually. It just gave me a less than 16 blocks area. Ow. Works close enough, though. Ow. Okay. It's interesting how it's just splinching me a whole ton here. There we go. Running jump. Yeah. But okay. There we go. Now the important thing. Well, the second most important thing. A freaking cooldown. So that we don't just do that. Or not and have it consume massive hunger. We both know that's not a sufficient limiting factor. Plus it's irrelevant for mobs. And these abilities are meant to also be used by mobs. I see you grinning slyly there, sir. Kindly do not. Map name. Cooldown. Okay. And then, on our tick, we want to go through all of those values and tick them down, and whichever ones are at 0, clear out. So let's see, resource location, ability in ability cooldowns, was that what I called it? Key set, yep. Can I modify these as I'm going? I'm not altering the order, so I should be able to. I'm also not iterating directly through the thing, so that's fine as well. Cooldown minus sinum of cooldown times -1, which should mean it always tends towards 0. Okay. Can I call a single thing on this, or am I gonna have to remove if, maybe? For each. Give an action for each entry in this map until all entries have been processed, so the action throws an exception. That should hopefully be able to do the trick. Learned the hard way the other day that key sets don't use a stable sort, so they can radically change the order of iteration. Interesting. Okay, so then we go over to teleport to position, get the living data of the entity here, and put ability on cooldown. That would be a registry name, I think. Guess I need to get the ability. It should just be the registry name here. Okay. Hopefully that'll work. Need to be a bit more careful, but since this is meant to be a unique ability, that should be fine. Right. Now it should mean that we only teleport once every 6 seconds. Next is the hard part. Making it not be as low anytime you're shifting. Gee, how far does Dimension Door run? Cast level 8th. Hoi! Quite a bit. Quite a bit. Let's see. 8 times 4 would be 32, that'd be 320. That would be 720 feet. Or 219 blocks. Ish. Dear Lord. Giving that ability to a player would be very busted. As long as they weren't, like, indoors, I guess. Oh, I just realized a thing. We didn't add a check to say if it was actually on cooldown. So, we still go Numies. So we need to add that in here as well. So turn, ability cooldowns, contains key, that. Straightforward. Okay, so if it's not on cooldown and you're sneaking, then we do all that. And if we succeed, then we set the cooldown. One of the advantages I have in mind for putting things onto your favorite abilities list is that they'll, like, change their visual, so they'll light up whenever they're off cooldown. Which will also help using them in combat. Okay, now we should have an actual limit. Well, interesting things are happening. Namely, nothing. Interesting. I can only presume that's because I hacked up the cooldown section. How does the cooldown end? It gets removed from the ability cooldowns map whenever it hits 0. Or it should, but I've never used this function before and I'm terrible at it, so who knows? Will it give me a concurrent modification exception if I try to remove it in this loop, or do I have to send it through a second loop? I will have to take it through a loop if I put it on a list saying remove this key, then I'm still gonna have to send it through a loop, because it doesn't have a removal, which would also be a loop, but either way. if... let's just actually make that here. Okay. So that's if cooldown equals 0, then finished cooldowns dot add that ability name, or map name to be exact. If you somehow end up with multiple ways to do this, then oh dear. I should do this right. For each map name, ability cooldowns, remove that. That should work. I could also check. I could also just have the thing check if it's when it's asking if it's on cooldown. Is it not there, or is it there and its value isn't 0? Just for a little bit of fuzziness there. I think I also might have just been terminally increasing it, because I was subtracting the sign-on, but I was also timing it by -1, which would have inverted it, which would have theoretically meant it was never going to hit 0. But I don't have a visual on that just yet, so yeah. But yeah, hopefully there'll be a button that you click, and that brings up your abilities in a kind of radial menu, not unlike how Vampirism does it. But you'll be able to, like, click keys to favorite them as, like, hotkeys. Okay. Let's see how this goes. That seems to be doing well. Yeah, I think that's working. Except for when it does that. Which I don't currently understand. But hey, this is still progress. Okay. So, it'd be nice to like play a ding noise to them whenever a cooldown comes off. But now we need keys. We just need the one key binding. We don't need to worry about it changing at all. We don't need to worry about setting anything to it. We just need keys. So call it key bindings. Let's see, activate ability 1. Key binding Z. Okay, and static final key binding ability 1 equals let's see, what kind of value do you want? Trying to figure out if I got this right. I'm pretty sure I'm missing something considerable. It's probably fine though. For right now. We need a category. Okay. Must be the Minecraft one, surely. Yes, good. Because it would throw massive errors otherwise. I am straight up currently referencing the vampirism code for this because it does exactly what I'm trying to do here. If you're wondering. Vampirism is a surprisingly ambitious mod? Yeah, which is a little... It kind of is failing a little bit on the graphical elements, I think. Although adding to the skin is a nice touch. Like, it's lacking in documentation, it's lacking in visual flair, I guess would be the phrase. But it is well built, to its credit. Okay, that should give us our starting point here. Now we should be able to say, just grab that and ask, is it pressed? Ish. So let's see, events. So let's see. Yep, that was definitely the wrong input event, I think. 1 second. Yes, it was. Not that one. Okay. If ability 1 is key down, that's the main thing we want to check here. Now in reality, what we'd actually do is send a packet to the server saying to activate a certain ability, but right now that's not what we got. Hey, Bucked. We're just going to try this and know full well that it's going to heck up the second we try to do anything on a server anyways. On a conceptual level, this is an interesting project because it's sort of the direct speciation of the type system. So the type system could be likened to a sort of primordial ooze where there's a whole bunch of things that are very strange and very odd and very diverse. The sort of Cambrian explosion. And now we're sort of like ticking evolution forward a few thousand years through millennia. And we're finding different species that have distinct abilities and whatnot, even if they have things in common. Okay. Check if button made it in. It didn't because I didn't tell it to actually get registered. Should that be where I go there as well? Oh. Does Eclipse have warning pragmas that show up on compiles? I don't think I've ever up until this point heard the word pragma, so I don't know. Maybe? Let's see, we need to... On the client setup, I think I'll do a trick, actually. That should suffice. Let's find out. We don't need this to work well yet, or even reliably. We just need this to do a thing when we hit a button. I imagine it's continually surprising to a lot of people that my education on how to program was minimal at best. Okay, controls. Hey, we got one. Okay. Let's say Control T is our button. And see what happens next. So now we should be able to teleport without having to sneak. Hopefully. Huzzah! And if I just hold the key down, we should also teleport. Hurrah! Okay. So yeah, having a little ding noise would be nice, just to make sure that you know when an ability has come off cooldown. But this is pretty good. Hey. Stutter step teleport went away. I imagine there's a little bit to be done with desync there, especially with players. Players are very irritating in a lot of ways. About there. Okay. Okay, that's good. We have a key binding. Next step, making it properly synchronized across to the server so that we don't actually have a system that breaks the instant you try to put it on a server. Allow for changing what ability is bound to what key binding. All sorts. Lots of stuff to do. And of course, heavily expanding the available list of abilities so that we can have interesting stuff going on. And also tying it directly to JSON data inside of the data pack so that you can change whatever is up. And also actually having a command to add and remove abilities to players rather than having to tack them onto creature types like this. But, whew, that is a lot for one night. That is a lot for one night. Dear Lord. So, hope you've all enjoyed. I'm gonna get some food. I think I've earned my dinner and some ice cream tonight. My next stream should be on Thursday night with some more Among Us with the World of Madness friends, and then on Saturday we should have some carousel, playing some random games with the patrons, and we're back for more of this. with lots going into it on Tuesday. Meanwhile, check out the channel over at youtube.com/RoboComic. Tomorrow there will be a video describing the type system. Not quite as it currently sits, but certainly something very similar to this. And as ever, everything I do is powered by you over at patreon.com/lying. Hope you've all enjoyed. I will catch you all as ever next time. Bye bye.